Понятно. Hi guys, when are we starting?
Hey Dimitri, let's maybe allow 1 or 2 more minutes.
Sure.
I can see we have
Yep.
33 participants at this moment in time. So let's give it another, let's say 1 to 2 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Dimitri, can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Very, very good. Okay, colleagues and friends from around the world, ladies and gentlemen, I think let's get started on on our little workshop here today on Friday, and we are going to talk a little bit about how to cooperate with the classical sports federations. This is one of the topic for this my time afternoon, in other cases probably morning, and late into the evening in other places of the world. But let me start out by thanking you all for dialing in, making yourself available for this workshop here today. I hope that you will find it beneficial, because it's actually a quite important topic that we are gonna discuss and address. And my dear friend Dmitry Grigoriev, who is also with us here today, I will make a more in-depth introduction about him a little bit later when we move further into the presentation. But as I said in my opening here, this is a workshop on how to cooperate with the classical sports, the more traditional sports, and then also with the local physical community experience example, building onto that. So basically, the purpose and the reasoning for this workshop here today is to get a more, let's say, full view and understanding on how to actually, in an efficient and effective way, cooperate, as I said, with the more traditional, more classical sports federations, which ultimately then should benefit, you can say, both sides, as I say, on the fence, both the classical but also the phygital sport. And by the end of the day, ultimately, hopefully us as a community. It's a very delicate, it's a very sensitive topic that we are discussing, which basically also have the global attention, and hence we need to strike the right balance in this and also moving forward. Also, what we will be discussing today is the cooperation with other federations and how we can help best possible find the Phygital athletes and certainly also the referees. Just a few comments also. We will, towards the end of the workshop today, have the possibility of questions and answers. So I kindly ask you to, let's say, limit the questions today to the topic of the workshop and not necessarily anything that would relate to WPC and to Phygital International. Actually, if you go to the homepage of WPC, you will find a section in there with questions and answers that hopefully will address many of the questions and answers that you are sitting with. If your question is not addressed there, then please go and write an email to us on join@worldphygital.org. That's join@worldphygital.org. Ask your question there, and then we will certainly get back to you with more answers to it. So please, again, limit the questions related to the workshop topic here today. Also, and this is just a friendly update, as we have said a number of times, both when we met in Istanbul, but also lately in the last workshop, we will start accepting members on the 15th of July, which is basically only 3 days away now. So it's very closely coming up. And then also, just as a bit of a cliffhanger towards the end of July, we will have another workshop that is in the pipeline and in preparation, being prepared as we speak, which is called the Road to Games of the Future 25. And also to remind you, the Games of the Future 25 will take place in the Emirates, United Arab Emirates, in the Q4 of the year. So with that said, as I said before, I would also like to now hand over the floor to our dear colleague and very good friend. I would call him an expert in the topic that we are gonna discuss and learn more about here today, and that is Dmitry Grigoriev, the former director of the Russian Phygital Sport Federation. And probably in all fairness, also the person who was instrumental and deeply involved in forming the first federation in the world, the Phygital Federation in the world. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my dear friend Dmitry and give you the floor. Dmitry, the floor is yours.
Thank you for this very kind introduction, Nice. I will go through a few slides right now, and they very much show the present situation and relations and interactions with the Classical Federation and overall preparation for the process of qualifying and selecting teams and trying to qualify for the games in UAE in 2025. But just a brief history. We've started here in Russia for some objective and subjective reasons, backwards. First of all, there was the announcement of the Games of the Future, which is the ultimate competition. Also, apart from other different sports which are in the Games of the Future, but also in Phygital sport, a top-level competition. And then we thought, well, if we have a proper sport, a new sport, we should really, legitimize it. We should make it an official sport and recognize it in Russia. It also has a little to do with the fact that, in terms of government financing of the event in a sport that does not exist in a bureaucratic sort of space was a problem. So we needed to legitimize it, to make it officially recognized by the Ministry of Sport. and we needed to create a Russian federation that would take care and, be the caretaker of that sport as such. Now, the first idea was to, okay, well, let's put into the Russian Phygital Sport Federation everything that has Phygital in its name. So that means Phygital football, Phygital basketball, Phygital ice hockey, Phygital racing, Phygital shooters, rhythm simulator, all those, everything Phygital in the games of the future program. Let's put it into one federation. We were quite naive at that because establishing an officially recognized federation in our country means, apart from being obliged, with rights, you have responsibilities, and you become responsible for development of the sport. You become responsible for holding national championships and cups for each of those disciplines. You are responsible for preparing coaches for youth clubs. You're responsible for um, establishing the core of refereeing in your country if you take on each of those disciplines. And having already started before all the formal procedures of being recognized have come through, and that took just under a year from the recognition of the sport to the official recognition of the federation that is, developing it. We realized that all our regions that were holding in the competitions and developing the sports in their parts of the country. Just for your information, in case you don't know, Russia is split into 89 different regions. That's a lot of regions, and some of those regions are quite small. Some of them could be a country in their own right in terms of the population or the area that they take up. So it's a very big endeavor. But anyhow, when they were holding the tournaments in Phygital football or Phygital basketball, they would always go to their regional offices of a football federation or the regional office of the Russian Basketball Federation, and they would partner up and hold those Phygital events together. Because a lot of the regional offices of those classical sports federations, they have the infrastructure, they have the people, they have referees, and they are known for being the basketball or the football guys. I'm just gonna mention those two, but that's just to make the conversation easier. But the same goes for the ice hockey or for the racing and others. So and going through the Russian bureaucratic laws for there's a special law for sport, and we understood that we cannot put all the eggs into one basket. The eggs are just too big and the basket is too small. So we've partnered up with the Russian Football Union, Russian Basketball Federation, and we suggested that they extend their sports with another discipline, add those disciplines to their classical sport. Because, for example, Russia was the first country to officially recognize what they call interactive football. So basically a football simulator like FIFA 2024 or any other one as an official discipline of football. Obviously, the mini football or futsal has been an official discipline of the football sport for many years before that. So when we combined the simulator with the mini football, and made the Phygital football, in essence, we took one discipline of football, at least recognized, at least in Russia, another discipline in football, recognized in Russia and all over the world, and made a new discipline. So it made a lot of sense, and actually, according to law, we as Russian Phygital Sports Federation couldn't register Phygital football without changing the rules and the equipment of playing Phygital football to an extent that would not mix with either interactive football or the mini football disciplines. So it just didn't make any sense all around in terms of regional cooperation, in terms of the sports law, and in terms of future life and development of the sport, to try to register it and include it into the overall Phygital sport. So we've partnered up with those federations, and they've registered a duathlon of their sport. So there's like a duathlon of football, interactive and mini football. Same goes for basketball and so forth. So what we have now is sorry, I just switched off the microphone. I'm going to show my screen. So that's where we're now, and I'll start my presentation quickly. So we have the slide that was presented to us by Oleg Kolesnikov in Istanbul, where that shows the tiers of and levels and stages of qualifications for the next games of the future. And those tier 2 and tier 3 tournaments, those are the ones that will be run by some of us or all of us in our own countries, or the local members, future members of the WPC, will be run in their countries in order to hold the tournaments and select the best teams to take further qualifications for the games of the future run by Phygital International. We've seen this slide as well. So in Russia, the national and the local tournaments are called Russian Phygital Games. They will take place later this year, and they will be the finals for the local tournaments. Now I'll explain more how the local tournaments are run, because with every classical federation that has the rated discipline, so namely football and basketball federations, there's a very different approach on how they're involved in the Russian Phygital Games. So as I said, the rhythm simulator and tactical shooter, they are owned, registered, and developed by the Russian Phygital Sport Federation. That's the deal here. The Phygital football is developed, or at least owned, by the Russian Football Union, and the Phygital basketball is owned and developed, a bit more on that further, by the Russian Basketball Federation, just to recap. Now, but in actual fact, in order not to bait or disappoint or for somehow anger the big, and in Russia, like in many other countries, the football federation, basketball federations, they're very big and powerful, by giving the right to hold the national finals, the WPC application for WPC membership for Russia in WPC will be done not by the Russian Phygital Sport Federation, but by ADCS. ADCS is a non-commercial organization called Agency for Development of Computer Sports. So this organization will apply for the WPC membership, and will have, at least for 2025, the obligation to hold the tournaments and present the top teams in those 4 disciplines for further qualifications in the games of the future. Now, so ADCS is organizing the Russian Phygital Games later on, after all the local tournaments are being held, or other tournaments, which I'm going to talk in a second. So when we talk about the rhythm simulating tactical shooter, ADCS completely delegates the holding of the local and national tournaments in those two disciplines. So the rhythm simulating tactical shooter parts of the Russian Phygital games will be done pretty much by the Russian Phygital Sport Federation. And so the RPSF holds the small, or the regional offices hold small tournaments, then they do local tournaments and invite winners from smaller tournaments from other regions, and then the top teams go to Moscow. Will go to Moscow for the Russian Phygital Games to select the best teams to qualify further for the next stages of selection for the games of the future. Now, when we talk about basketball, now the Russian Basketball Federation has done a really good job in promoting and developing the basketball in their own domain and their own environment, using all the resources, including financial resources, to develop the sport further, and we're very happy about it. We have very good relationship with them from the very start, from the very beginning, and it keeps going on. So the RBF, they already held the Russian National Cup, and the winners of that competition was held in May. The winning team represented, they became the Russian national teams and represented Russia at the BRICS games in Kazan in June. So the Russian national Phygital basketball team was the winning team of the Russian Cup that was held in May. This coming weekend, the RBF will be holding Russian championship in the city of Yekaterinburg, and the top two teams from that competition and top two teams from the National Cup competition will have two and two, so to the RBF total 4 spots. The final competition in the Russian Phygital Games that will be held later this year. The total number of slots at the Russian Phygital Games will be 16 in basketball. So the 4 of them were allocated to the RBF, and they have very competitive competitions. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if the winner of the Phygital Games would be one of those 4 teams from RBF. Now, the other 12 out of the 16 spots will be filled by the independent tournament operators or wildcard direct invites. Mostly it's for very, very famous in Russia streamers, bloggers, or media teams. Will get 1 or 2 spots with a wild card, and the rest are winners of different regional, commercial or non-commercial tournaments that also produce really high-level winners. So they all come together and compete in the championship of champions in the Russian Phygital Games. Now, ADCS, as the of the Russian Phygital Games, as the future member of the WPC from Russia, is coordinating the efforts of those independent tournament operators, is coordinating with the Russian Basketball Federation, and together will produce a very, very large season in terms of the number of teams that took part, number of tournaments being held, and the quality of the team that will win the Phygital games, I'm sure it will be really quite high, having encompassed the whole country geographically into this tournament. So it promotes the whole idea and involves all the regions where basketball is being played. So this is really great partnership between the future WPC member and the classic sports federation and other entities, commercial or otherwise, or regional governmental, that are interested in extending their support and organize tournaments for Phygital basketball. Now, when it comes to football, that's a completely different matter. Football, like in most other countries, in Russia, is the biggest sport in terms of money that is, involved in it, the TV broadcast, the betting market, the number of kids they want to be the professional football. I'm sure you all know that I'm sure it's the same in most countries. So, but the Russian the Russian Football Union is a very rich and a very busy organization. So although they've registered the Phygital football or the duathlon of football as part of their sport, they haven't actually held a single competition and not planning on holding a single competition this year. So in the Russian Phygital Games, all the 16 spots will be filled by ADCS through the winners or with the winners of the independent, what we call official Russian Football Union tournaments, because there were just none, and also some direct invites and wild cards with, let's call them professional or highly proficient teams that expressed interest in taking part in the competition. But again, the independent tournaments, I think they're about 10 different tournaments that already consist of winners of smaller local tournaments will be given the slot in the final Russian Phygital Games. So the net is cast very wide, and given the popularity and the ready availability of the infrastructure, be it PlayStation gaming and mini football, playing mini football, the infrastructure is all there. So for many organizers, local organizers holding a Phygital Football Federation, it's much easier than Phygital shooting, for example, which involves a much more technical setup, much less known and much less widespread, namely laser tag competition is much more difficult to hold. So that's the we have right now. Yeah, I don't have any more slides to show you. I've been blabbing on for the last 20 minutes. I hope it made sense, but if it didn't, I'm very happy to answer questions, which should be written into chat. Ladies and gentlemen, organizers Victoria, if you correct me, but I think if you wanna ask a question, I'm not sure if you can mute button and ask it, but you can definitely write in chat, and I have it open right now, and I'm ready to answer any of those questions if you have any. Or maybe I was so clear and expressive that you all understood everything.
Hello, everyone. Here we have several questions in our internal chat.
Okay.
But I think that it's better if somebody will raise a hand and we will go through current questions.
That's what you need to do.
Okay.
You need to raise a hand. But also maybe someone has some other experience without having a presentation, but just share some of the tips and tricks that they've had in dealing with those classical federations. And I think we have a question from David from Mexico.
Hello, how are you? Nice
Hi.
to see you again. My question is about how do you justify the direct qualification of the independent operation tournaments straight to nationals? I think it's an excellent idea. We also had it, and it could allow us to bring stars. But the rules received recently state that teams need to go through regionals first before going directly to national tournaments. So how do you justify it in the rules so that we can do this? We can do the same.
But I think the rule book also provides the space for direct invites for big name teams. So that's the only exception that we will be using. So the only teams that get through without any regional qualifiers, local qualifiers, before getting to nationals, are teams that have already proven themselves one way or another in being good football teams, for example, and that will bring with them to the event, to the sport, their audience, their promotion, and highlight the event amongst a much bigger audience that helps the tournament, helps the promotion of the sport. Because I mean, Russia, for Russia, this will be the second time that the Russian nationals will be held. First time was obviously last year, and the Russian Phygital Sport Federation actually held the unofficial Russian national championship for football and basketball, because those big classical federations have not yet registered within their sports those new disciplines. So we did all the grunt work. We held all the smaller local tournaments, bigger local tournaments, and the regionals. And the regionals were a test event for Kazan, the very last one, where only Russian teams were playing. And we produced the Russian national championship for the ice hockey. They won the games of the future because they really invested into the Russian national championship. They got a lot of experience playing through the whole myriad of tournaments, and they were really preparing because they wanted to win, and they did win. It was a very sort of nail-biting match at the end, but they won. The winner of the Russian national Phygital basketball tournament, they won the game of the future. Again, they were very set to win. They spent a lot of time and money. They're actually part of a professional sports club. They don't play in the Premier League or the they play a lot of sports, and it's a commercial club, and they have a team in ice hockey and football and in basketball. They called Liga Pro. I'm sure those of you that were in Kazan saw at least one of those teams being played in one of the tournaments, except football. But in basketball, ice hockey, they're so they've really invested. They've gone through a lot of the tournaments, become the Russian national champions, and then won the games of the future. For football, it's a different matter. The winner of the Russian nationals was Lokomotiv Football Club, which is actually a professional Premier League club name in Russia. It's, if you know anything about Russian football, but Spartak, CSK, Zenit, those are the big name clubs in the European Champions League. Lokomotiv is right behind them all the time. So for us, it's like, having, I don't know, not Manchester United having a Phygital team, but, a very similar level of a club name represent, delegating their team to, forming a Phygital football team and actually putting up for competition in the Russian local, and then larger local, and then national championships. But they took second place. It was a personality issue that didn't let them win. I think personally, it's their captain who screwed up or screwed over the whole team, and were very upset about it. But they are the ones that that lost it for them to Peñarol. So you know, but they're still, you know, second place is still pretty good. So the wider you cast the net, the wider is your cooperation with the you know, big name clubs, big name federations, the better your champion becomes, and the more rated I'm sure they will be in the international scene, the more chance they have to win. But coming back, David, to your question is, you know, all the teams that have direct invites into the Russian national finals will either be really, you know, high profile teams, or they would have gone through a local tournament, and you know, they would need to win something there. It's just, in our case for this year, it's not done with a cooperation of the Football Federation, but you know, through agreements with independent regional tournaments.
Let me add, so I just present myself. This is Galina Chitin, WPC Relationship Director. David, so regarding the obligatory tournament for the in-country regional, for this season, as Dima mentioned right now, there is no obligation that you need to arrange this tournament in order to get to Games of the Future 2025. But if you arrange it, you will still have some privilege, some extra points in your rating based on the results of the season 2024-2025. However, you can skip that stage, as Dima mentioned, and you can go directly to national tournaments. So this is how we configured it for this season. Did we answer your question, David?
Yes, I mean, both things that you're saying are excellent. They're great news. I just they don't reflect what is said on the rules. Like, I copied and pasted something there that said that all teams in nationals should come from regionals. But if it's, as you guys are saying, that we can have direct invites to nationals for like big teams that might not want to go to the regional tournaments, and also that not all the regionals are required for nationals, I mean, those are both excellent news. I understood maybe the rules differently, but I mean, that's great to hear.
Okay, so yes, there is no obligation right now.
Great, thank you.
Anything else I can share with you? Maybe I forgot to, like, an aspect that you're all facing right now, or some of you, and someone else has any things to share with the group? Some of the, yes, we have yeah, from Iraq.
Yeah, hello. I guess everybody, most of them know me already. I'm Haidar, the president of Iraq Esports Federation. We have a couple of meetings with the Olympic Committee and the Minister of Youth. So about participating in the Phygital sports, so in countries who is going to structure and authorized by the Olympic Committee going as it should be, there will be just like an MOU with the other federations, and we are ongoing with this. So we already signed 2 MOUs, and we're waiting for the others with the federations like the football, basketball, and the others. Then, because every participation, international participation should be informed by the Minister of Youth, by an authorized federation. So this is how it's going to be in, like, because it will be just cooperated with the other federation. So both teams should be inform the Minister of Youth before they can participating outside the country to get the official participation. So that's how we're going to work in Iraq. So and we are almost finished that with the MOUs with the other federations, and we're going to start the national qualifiers. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that having been to the summit in Istanbul, spoke to colleagues from Belarus, and I think in their case it was very similar that they've signed agreements with those federations, and those federations delegated everything to do with the Phygital part, with the Phygital version of their sport to the local Phygital federation, and they're doing everything. And that was a very mutual agreement, but it all depends on local laws. What works in Russia or in Iraq might not work in Mexico. So that's our experience. But I think, you know, in our case, an important thing is that maybe sometimes you need the Phygital Sport Federation in your country to develop something that doesn't fit into the into other federations. For example, Phygital Shooter or Rhythm Simulator, which is a completely new beast. Although there was a talk about maybe the Dance Federation, Russian Dancing Sport Federation. We have 2 or 3 different kinds, Liz, like acrobatic rock and roll federation, and there is breakdance federation, and there is, you know, other dance federations. But there was, you know, there was a talk about assigning it to them, but that was quickly scrapped because they don't want to deal with it. So anyhow, Russia, the Phygital Federation could be established if needed to promote the sport in your country, to promote the name Phygital sport, Phygital competitions, maybe to get the official government financing for development of the youth sport or student sport, or for, you know, even subsidies for, you know, for holding national competitions, or access to the government-owned sports venues. So for that, you might want or need to establish a federation. And in some cases, the classical federations would want to develop the Phygital version of their sport by themselves. In some cases, they won't. But in case there is a you know, some kind of, I don't know, jealousy or discontent with having one federation holding the national qualifiers for the games of the future in the sport that is called, you know, football, which they're not actually a federation of football I'm talking about. If a national Phygital Sport Federation holds national finals in Phygital football, then your local national football federation can be unhappy about it, because, you know, they might think that, you know, how can one federation hold a competition, an important competition in the sport that is owned by them. So an idea of establishing a non-commercial organization that, you know, association of Phygital sports federations, or whatever you fits in your case. In our case, it's association association of development of computer sports, could be the way out, could be the middle ground between all the sports federations, you know, to unite them together under a different umbrella, not being called a Phygital Sport Federation. So this could be a way out. I think in our case, it worked out quite well. Everyone is, you know, equally unhappy that they're not the ones being in charge of qualifying for the games of the future 2025, but then everyone is equally unhappy. Well, not unhappy, or, you know, I hope I make sense and you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, that's what I'm just mentioned, because as the law of the federations in countries like in Iraq, so it should be first authorized by GISF, which was before like ISF, or by IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee. Otherwise, like it's happened with the tournament and championship for the Asian Football Federation in Qatar last time. So there was an alternative participation for the esports also, but it was also another cooperation between the us as an esports federation with the football federation, but will be under the umbrella of the football federation because they are the organizer. So yes, we come with a middle ground because, as you mentioned, exactly, the other federations like the football, basketball, and other federations, they will not accept it to do them sports as a tournament or a championship in country without them permission. In this case, we just made the do this MOUs and partnership with them to make them participate under the umbrella of the esports, which is just like, as you mentioned, it's a middle ground and shares all games plus esports in this Phygital sports. Thank you very much.
Nice, you here?
I hear you, Dimitri.
There was a lot of mention of the IOC here, and I think one of the questions prior to this meeting today was a suggestion or maybe mention again of the IOC and being recognized by the IOC. Are there any plans for WPC to be recognized by the IOC in any way?
I would say at this point in time, there is no aspiration to seek recognition from the IOC, let alone now what used to be called GIFES and which is now Sport Accord, and the 5 umbrella organizations sitting under the newly formed Sport Accord there. And also a little bit coming full circle back here to actually the topic of today, how to cooperate with the more traditional classical federations. Because let us again remind ourselves that we are not an international federation in the, let's say, in the very stringent common sense of having a international federation recognized by the IOC, the national federations underneath the international federations with clubs and members and stuff like this. This is not our organizational setup. We are, let's say, entities, we are clubs, we are people joining this World Phygital community. And at this point in time, we are not seeking recognition from the IOC. And hey, who knows? A few years down the road, it might be the other way around. You never know.
So IOC would want to become a full member of the WPC.
Well, thank you
Sounds like a plan.
What I said.
I hope nobody's recording this. Anyhow, I think an important thing to operate with in discussion with the classical federation is that as a WPC members, that in each country there's a WPC member, or there will be one, and they have the I don't want to say the power, but that's actually what it is, the ability or they have the authority to operate the rating of tournaments. So, for example, for Russia, anyone, and I mean anyone, can hold a Phygital football or Phygital anything tournament, but does it count towards the Russian Phygital games? Well, it's up to the rating operator to decide and to acknowledge and to confirm. And in last year there were after we hit the mark of 300 tournaments around the country, and I mean, there were university tournaments, there were corporate tournaments, there was a whole myriad of tournaments. They really liked the idea, and they, an organization or a city council or a company like a big corporation want to hold a Phygital tournament. When we hit the mark of 300, we stopped counting, and that was sometimes beginning of autumn, I think. When we hit a total number of 5,000 people that took part in those tournaments, we just stopped counting. We didn't have enough manpower to keep collecting and aggregating the data. So it doesn't mean that, last year, before all those disciplines were, distributed amongst the classical federations, we didn't want anyone to stop holding the tournament. We were very much promoting the idea, and were very open to anyone organizing the tournament. They just didn't count towards Games of the Future in Kazan, that's all. And like FIFA or the Russian, or not Russian, but any national football federation will never stop or prevent anyone from holding a soccer tournament or football tournament. And it can be called pretty much anything they want to be called, as long as it's not called FIFA World Cup or the National Championship or the National Cup. Those are the prerogatives of the federations themselves, and that's where the money are, and that's where the sponsorships are, and so on. But no federation will ever stop a corporation or a club or an organization or a school or university holding the tournament. It just doesn't count towards being the champion of the country or being qualified for the national, top national team, or counts towards getting to the World Cup or whatever it is. So, last year we would promote the idea of, and would help anyone who would want to hold the tournament by giving the rules we had at the time, by sharing our experience holding the tournament, and helping them with contacts and maybe equipment, and in some cases we would actually make money by providing commercial services that's mostly for the corporate market, by actually coming to the corporation and bringing in the equipment with us, bringing in the people, the screens, the stages, the PlayStations, referees. We would hire them all, put it into one package, and just do it turnkey for 1 or 2 days, and actually make some money for other activities. That was actually, quite a busy period for us summer last year in that aspect. That helped us to promote the Games of the Future, promote the Russian Phygital Sport Federation, promote the sport, and just spread the word, and actually not pay for it, actually make some money doing that. Because corporations, they want the turnkey service. They don't want to deal with it. They just want their guys, especially the companies with a lot of people, like a big customer last year was the Russian railways. They have more than 10, I think 12 or maybe 14 huge regional offices that encompass a whole bunch of regions in them. And they have, I'm afraid I don't know exactly the right number, but maybe like 80,000 employees. And a lot of them are young people. So they just wanted the best, the finest, the most interesting stuff for their youth, young employees, and that we had really great feedback in those tournaments, really great participation, and they had a lot of fun doing that. So that's another thing to consider. But being the operator of the rating really gives you the bargaining power with those classical federations, because they can do whatever they want, but if it doesn't count towards Games of the Future, it doesn't count. It doesn't mean you should stop them from doing their own thing. Let them do their own thing. At the end of the day, they will still come back to you and one way or another cooperate with you in order to get to the Games of the Future. Yeah. Again, I keep blabbing on. I hope it makes sense. Any more questions?
Okay, Dimitri, seems like we are also soon coming up to the hour here, and I don't know if there's any final questions out there. No, doesn't look like it. So, so I think we can consider to close the workshop here
Yes,
today.
Nis. Yes, right, Nis. So if anyone will have a question after the workshop, please write us at join@worldphygital.org. So a lot of information was provided to you by Nis and Dima. So maybe you need some time to digest it, and please take your time and just write to us, and we will take all your questions. So you are welcome, please.
Thank you,
So
Kalina.
yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen around the world, thank you very much for taking part in this workshop today on how to cooperate with the more classical traditional sports. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your ear. Thank you for your very solid, relevant questions that was put in here. And as Galina was saying, should there now be more questions, which is quite normal when you sit and think about it, should there come more questions in the next coming days, please do not hesitate to send us by email, and we will certainly be very pleased and happy to answer those questions that comes in. And certainly also a big thank you to Dimitri, the former director of the Russian Phygital Sport Federation, for all his sharing of views and certainly also his experience and good solid advice. We heard about Russian Rail just here, how that was an example. So thank you, Dimitri, for also taking your time to share your views and your very solid experience in the whole build-up to Games of the Future. And just before I close the meeting, please remember that, as I said in my opening, that we are planning on having yet another workshop, which is phased towards the road to Games of the Future 25 in the Emirates, and that is scheduled to take place towards the end of the month of July. So with that said, again, friends, colleagues around the world, thank you for your time, and I wish you all a great weekend ahead. Take care.